Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees. Tonight's top story. Politicians remember Sir David Amess, the Conservative MP fatally stabbed on Friday. Parliament is suspended in a day of poignant tributes to a man of the people.
We will cherish his memory. We will celebrate his legacy. And we will never allow those who commit acts of evil to triumph over the democracy and the Parliament that Sir David Amess loved so much.
Also tonight, venues in Scotland now have a legal obligation to check the vaccine passports of people entering nightclubs and large events. Normal business in Parliament was suspended today as politicians paid tribute to Sir David Amess, the Conservative MP who was fatally stabbed on Friday while at his constituency meeting. As one of the country's longest-serving MPs, he dedicated his career to the town in Essex that he represented. The Speaker of the House earlier describing Sir David as having a reputation for kindness and generosity. NTD's Jane Well has more from London.
A special service is being held here in St Margaret's Church at Westminster Abbey in memory of Sir David Amess. Earlier, in a poignant moment, Parliament opened with a minute's silence.
May the bright memory of his rich life ever outshine the tragic manner of his death. Let us keep silence.
Tributes were also paid to James Brokenshire MP, who recently passed away with cancer. Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, took questions as usual, but there was also discussion around the safety and security of MPs. That was before a statement from the Prime Minister.
Dedicated, passionate, firm in his beliefs, but never anything less than respectful for those who thought differently. Those are the values he brought to a lifetime of public service. There can be few among us more justified than him in his deep faith in the resurrection and the life to come. And while his death leaves a vacuum that will not and can never be filled, we will cherish his memory, we will celebrate his legacy, and we will never allow those who commit acts of evil to triumph over the democracy and the Parliament that Sir David Amess loved so much.
A man of Catholic faith, he was pro-life and will be remembered for his campaigning on fuel poverty, animal welfare and wanting the town he represented to be given city status. A wish now granted by the Prime Minister, who respectfully remembered how Sir David highlighted achievements in the town he loved.
Highlights of that bulging folder included a world record for playing the most triangles at once, a group of stilt walkers travelling non-stop from the Essex coast to Downing Street, and a visiting foreign dignitary allegedly flouting protocol by saying he liked Southend more than Cleethorpes, Mr. Speaker. A compelling case, Mr. Speaker. And as it is only a short time since Sir David last put that very case to me in this chamber, I am happy to announce that Her Majesty has agreed that Southend will be accorded the city status it so clearly deserves.
The leader of the opposition expressing his grief.
Sir David was a dedicated parliamentarian, and his loss is felt profoundly across this House. We are united in our grief at this terrible time. We are thinking of David and his family. We are thinking, once again, of our dear friend Joe Cox, who was killed just 5 short years ago.
Followed by moving tributes from fellow MPs. Sir David's death comes 5 years after Joe Cox, a Labour MP, was murdered. It's renewed concern over the security of MPs. The Home Secretary on Sunday saying there'll be extra measures put in place.
When we think of David himself, man of the people, he was killed doing a job that he loved, serving his own constituents as an elected democratic member. And of course, acts of this are absolutely wrong, and we cannot let that get in the way of our functioning democracy. So that is why there are measures underway right now. I've convened meetings yesterday. I've been with the Speaker of the House and with the police and our security services to make sure that all measures are being put in place for the security of MPs so that they can carry on with their duties as elected democratic members.
The Justice Secretary has suggested using private security guards rather than police to protect MPs. Described by his family as strong and courageous and a man of peace, they remember Sir David in front of the church where he was killed, doing a job he loved, serving the people. Jane Worrell, NTD News.
In Southend-on-Sea, tributes poured in over the weekend. Residents gathered to pay their respects for the man that had represented them. Referred to as a man of the people, he stood for those who elected him for almost 40 years. To some, he was Southend. NTD's Eddie Aiken has this report.
The shocking death of Sir David Amess in front of the people he served has caused distress and sadness in the Southend community. Residents and voters came to lay flowers and leave cards for a man many had met in person. The spot near the site of the attack, now a place for quiet recollection. Among those who paid their respects to Amess were members of the local lost and found dogs group, Tilly's Angels, just one of those who had received the support from the 69-year-old MP. Another group, a local charity that provides music education for people with learning disabilities, of which Sir David had been president.
Well, the David Amess that I know was just full of life. He just bellowed enthusiasm and passion, and he was known for it. And I think it's because he truly loved Southend.
Locals of Southend-on-Sea shared their thoughts on Saturday about how he'd be remembered.
Southend Council wanted to turn this into bus lanes up here. There's hundreds of shops, and he fought for us. Otherwise, all these shops up here employing hundreds of people would have been closed.
There is definitely a sadness.
That morning, party leaders came to visit the scene on Leigh-on-Sea, where the Conservative politician had been stabbed multiple times and died the previous afternoon. After laying flowers, Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Labour Party leader Keir Starmer stood for a minute or two in silence. The Metropolitan Police said its early investigation revealed a potential motivation linked to Islamist extremism. Essex Police confirmed a 25-year-old man was arrested on Friday on suspicion of murder. The suspect, now named, is being held under the Terrorism Act, a British national of Somali heritage. On Saturday evening, mourners gathered at a candlelit vigil. Old and young alike were drawn to Belfair's sports ground, a few hundred metres from the church where Sir David was killed.
He was absolutely passionate about this town, absolutely passionate about serving his constituents, and in that sense, tragically, he died as he lived.
Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
The Scottish Government's COVID passport scheme became enforceable today. That means venues have a legal obligation to check customers have had 2 doses of a COVID-19 vaccine when they attend nightclubs and large events. The measures came into effect at the beginning of this month, but businesses were given a grace period to try their procedures for checking and restricting entry. Businesses can download a free NHS Scotland COVID check app to verify vaccine certificates. People under 18, those unable to get the vaccine for medical reasons, people taking part in vaccine trials, and venue staff are exempt. Enforcement will be the responsibility of local council officers. The Scottish Government says the scheme will be reviewed regularly in line with their current process. Increasing wages, mass worker shortages and soaring energy prices may have left many food manufacturers concerned for their businesses amidst Brexit uncertainty. Many feel they are being hit from all sides as pressure looms to meet demand, and this has distressed every part of the farm-to-fork supply chain. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us the details.
All major economies are struggling with post-pandemic supply chain and labour problems, but some UK business owners say tough new immigration rules are making it harder to recover. Poultry farmer Nigel Upson has been hit hard by a shortage of European workers, as well as soaring feed and fuel costs.
We're being hit from all sides, and the Food Standards Agency are doing their best to beat us up as well, which is uncomfortable. But yeah, it is to use the phrase, a perfect storm, and as a consequence, you know, the industry will be losing money currently, and something will have to give at some point.
Southend's poultry plant needs around 140 workers, but is operating with less than 100. When numbers are tightest, marketing and finance staff get down on the production line. Output was cut by 10%, but wages had to go up 11% to retain staff.
Very damaging to the rural economy, potentially. You know, this business puts £3-4 million a year into the very local economy, and if we can't get the labour, we will either ultimately end up closing, or we'll have to move our factory into a city.
Upson says with a shortage of workers in rural communities and 1.1 million job vacancies, people have a choice. A driver shortage has led to a lack of fuel at petrol stations and gaps on supermarket shelves. The sudden rise in wages and drop in sales comes on top of spikes in the cost of animal feed, energy and packaging costs.
Yeah, we can put wages up, but prices will go up. And unfortunately, because of the percentage of income that lower paid people spend on food, 50% of their income goes on food, then it will hit them worst. Yeah.
Upson acknowledges the government's plan to move to a high-wage, high-skills ecosystem. But he says not all jobs fit that bill, and a shortage of workers risks destroying the rural economy. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
Still to come, Facebook announces plans to hire 10,000 people in the European Union to help build an online world called the Metaverse. That and more after the break. Facebook plans to create 10,000 jobs in the EU over the next 5 years to help build the so-called Metaverse, an online world where people use their electronic devices to move and communicate in a virtual environment. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg has talked up the idea since July and already committed £36 million to building it. It wouldn't be exclusive to Facebook, with Microsoft and others making their own plans. The aim is to use technologies such as virtual and augmented reality to mimic the experience of interacting in person. Facebook has already invested heavily in virtual reality. It owns companies like Oculus, maker of virtual reality headsets, which could be used to explore the metaverse. In France, it's been 1 year since an attack that shocked the nation. Residents of Paris gathered to honor slain teacher Samuel Paty on Saturday, who was beheaded by a radical Islamist in 2020. A sculpture of an open book with cartoons celebrating freedom of speech was unveiled in a ceremony attended by hundreds, including the French education minister. NTD's George Duquette brings us this report.
Several hundred people paid tribute on Saturday to a teacher beheaded by a radical Islamist last year after he showed caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad to his class. 47-year-old Samuel Paty was murdered on the 16th of October near his school in a northwest Paris suburb by an 18-year-old of Chechen origin who had become radicalised.
We all remember a fascinating teacher who managed to awaken us, to make us grow, to change our outlook on the world.
The killing led French authorities to reaffirm France's cherished rights of expression and secularism.
Drawings are obviously one of the main symbols of freedom of speech you can think of, since they're at the root of this attack. And we must not surrender an inch of ground on what freedom of speech represents in our country and in the world. Our human nature is at the core of this, our ability to blossom and be free. These are not small matters. These are essential things of life.
Paty's attacker had wanted to avenge the teacher's use of cartoons of the Prophet that he'd showed to 13-year-olds in a class on freedom of expression.
It was a good tribute. It's good. It pays homage to Samuel Paty. People have a right to express themselves. Homage to Samuel Paty.
Muslims see any depiction of the Prophet as blasphemous. France is home to Europe's largest Muslim minority. In the wake of the killing, some teachers acknowledged they censored themselves to avoid confrontation with pupils and parents over religion and free speech. Joy Duguid, NTD News.
The volcano on the Spanish island of La Palma continues to cause chaos and destruction. After a month of eruptions, there's no end in sight. Residents say the sadness is immense as lava continues to move across the island. Major parts of the economy are suffering as plantations and tourism are destroyed. NTD's Southend Constituents brings us the story.
The volcano that has caused chaos and destruction on the island of La Palma in Spain has now been erupting for a month, and authorities say there's no end in sight, leaving heartache for the towns here and people who live in them. The volcano has now destroyed almost 2,000 buildings and covered over 1,800 acres in lava. Many pets have been left homeless or abandoned. This drone is bringing food to stranded dogs. About 80,000 people live on the island and 7,000 of them have been forced to evacuate. For those who haven't, the ash coats everything. This waitress is telling us her throat hurts because of the falling ash, like a bad allergy. She has to constantly sweep it off the tables. On one of the neighboring islands, this man says he'd gone on holiday, but now the lava is close to his house. The sadness is immense, he says. The Canary Islands depend on tourism, but flights have been disrupted. The lava has destroyed plantations, another major part of the economy. Southend Constituents, NTD News.
Staying on La Palma, volunteers are helping to ease the suffering with a kitchen bringing food by a celebrity chef. They supply over 1,000 meals per day to evacuees fleeing the lava. NTD's Joy Duguid brings us more.
Hot meals for evacuees. That's what a non-profit organisation is offering on Spain's La Palma. They also feed the thousands of emergency workers serving here.
What we are doing is providing the security forces with support and are, above all else, giving them water and a sandwich.
Non-profit The World's Central Kitchen is headed by celebrity chef José Andrés. He recently partnered with the Archwell charity founded by Britain's Prince Harry and his wife. Early during the eruption on September 19th, volunteers reached one of the emptied neighbourhoods in a van.
The lava is very close. Until the day before yesterday, these houses were inhabited, but residents were told that an evacuation was imminent.
When creeping lava threatened to cut off power lines, a local hotel even suggested using up all of its food stocks. But later, volunteers managed to organise a large food convoy. In the bustling kitchen, seeded by a supermarket chain, a 45-year-old chef from Madrid said initially he had come just for a few days, but ended up here for 4 weeks.
It is very emotional, that sense of constantly being on the alert when there are evacuations. There are more people coming all the time, and you grow closer to them.
As the evacuation proceeds, the chef's kitchen has increased its supply over time, from 200 to 1,400 meals per day. Joy Duguid, NTD News.
And one West End theatre is offering afternoon tea to tempt patrons back to the auditorium. The recently restored Theatre Royal Drury Lane is drawing on its Regency architectural heritage to serve tarts, cakes and more in its grand saloon. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us this report.
The most fitting place to enjoy a rich chocolate cake with quirky green and pink icing must surely be a sumptuous Regency setting. And now the Theatre Royal Drury Lane is making that happen. With a modern twist on the outlandish desserts of the early 1800s, such as sticky toffee puddings filled with custard, this new Regency-themed afternoon tea gives a nod to the past and the future. It's the brainchild of baker Lily Jones.
I wanted to create an afternoon tea that was really modern and really fun, decadent, but full of things which are really delicious and things that people actually want to eat in 2021. So kind of scrapping the rule book a little bit on the tradition-bound afternoon tea. So there's no sandwiches, we've got sausage rolls, we've got a slice of cake, and yes, it's very beautiful.
One of the highlights is a handmade Regency-style ice cream trolley, serving a new spin on exotic ices of the times, a heady absinthe mint chocolate chip in shell-shaped bowls. With glittering chandeliers and pink and green marble, the Grand Saloon has benefited from the theatre's £60 million refurbishment. Madeleine Lloyd-Webber wants the afternoon tea to match the standards of the decor.
And we want to, with Drury Lane, set the bar extremely high. I want to be the first 5-star theatre destination in the world, frankly. And I'd like our teas to be a magnet. I want people to go to the theatre, have afternoon tea before or after, or just come to this beautiful set of rooms and have a luxury tea. And they don't need to go to the theatre, but it brings people into the West End.
London's West End has been hit hard by the lockdown. An industry report says UK theatre organisations lost almost £200 million by March this year. Amongst the cautiously optimistic are experts like Matthew Hemley of The Stage, a newspaper that covers the entertainment industry.
I think right now the outlook for theatre is very positive, and what Theatre Royal Drury Lane is showing is theatres having to think outside of the box a little bit more about how they get audiences back through the doors. And the Theatre Royal Drury Lane is a great example of that, because they're not just thinking about the shows, they're thinking about audiences coming to see the theatre itself, to have afternoon tea, to have a drink on the terrace. So theatres are having to think much more broadly about what they can offer audiences.
Afternoon tea in the Grand Saloon at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane opens on Monday, October 18th. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, London.
That's the news for today. Have a good evening. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.